Welcome back to another Marvel Snap video. Today we're going to be covering a topic that you might not even be aware of, and that is location rarity. When those three locations flip up in the center of the game board, not every location in the game has an equal probability of flipping up. In fact, there are four different rarities of locations in Marvel Snap. Based on data mines, they are listed as ultra rare, rare, uncommon, and common. There are varying numbers of each of these locations in the game, with common locations being approximately 13 times more likely to occur than ultra rare, uncommon being approximately 8 times more likely to occur than ultra rare, and rare locations occurring approximately 5 times as often as ultra rare locations do. Let's go ahead and dive on into taking a peek at which locations fall into which categories and talk about a little bit why I think this is a good thing that they're broken up in this manner. As of recording this video, there are actually only two locations that are flagged as Ultra Rare in Marvel Snap, and they are Ego and Worldship. Ego, rightfully so, changes the dynamic of the game completely. It goes from a game where you're actively playing your game pieces to the board to one where you're watching your game pieces be played, more similar to an auto battler style game than a card game. The dynamic then becomes the focus on how are you snapping and how are you retreating and how are you responding to your opponent doing the same. I think if Ego was more common than ultra rare, the complaints about it would be somewhat valid because it does make the game pretty drastically different. That being said, at ultra rare, I think Ego happens infrequently enough that it's truly novel. And at the end of the day, if you really don't like playing into the Ego location, just retreat for a cube and move on with your life. You're not likely to see it again because it is ultra rare. Similarly, while Worldship doesn't take away your ability to play your cards, the dynamic of the games that is involved in is just very different than a typical game of Marvel Snap. Most notably, if Worldship flips up as a second or third location, it also destroys any units on any other locations as well. And playing to just one single spot is very different. Cards like Green Goblin or Hobgoblin or things like the Symbiotes that clear out and condense power into a single card are much more powerful into a location like Worldship. As of this recording, there are currently 8 rare locations that are active in Marvel Snap, with 2 more that you're going to see here that are currently data mined that aren't in circulation. Fogwell's Gym here being one of them. Both players' cards get double XP at the end of the game. Kind of a novel one, helping players get boosters faster, but not one that they would want to come up frequently. District X, one that I personally am very happy is rare. I frequently bail out on District X games, and if I had to do that more often, it would make me fairly sad. Bar with No Name, I think, is another excellent one that's good at rare. It changes the dynamic of what the game is about, and it gives a small edge to cards like Hood or Mr. Negative in the decks that those cards are play, often giving free wins at the location, while many times just locking both players out from playing at it in general. As we scroll on down here, we see Lamentus, another location that has yet to be added to the game. Draw 3 cards, then destroy both decks. Another novel effect here, basically giving both players their resources up front, and then that is all they have for the rest of the game. Luke's Bar is another one that's similar to the Bar with No Name, not only in its namesake, but also in the type of effect that it has on the game. There is a small number of cards that can get into Luke's Bar, such as if your hand is full. It really enables some wacky things with stuff that have on reveal effects, but in general, it restricts the way players are able to play out and definitely deserves its rare slot. Olympia was one that I was actually a little bit surprised was rare, with its effect just being drawing 2 cards. I suppose it does mean over the course of the average game, you're seeing almost every card in your deck other than one, so it adds a lot of consistency to both sides. So I guess from that perspective, it probably makes sense that you don't want to be I see my entire deck this game to be an experience that happens too frequently. As we keep scrolling on down here, we have the Peak, another one that drastically changes the dynamic of the game. This is a location that I think some amount of the time when it flips up, one player's hand just comes completely non-functional. In fact, a rule I tend to stick to on stream is if the Peak flips up and my hand stays neutral or gets a little bit better, I always snap when that happens, because the odds that it destroyed my opponent's hand tends to be high on average, and you often get a free cube when you do that. Triskelion is another one that I think is excellent to have in the rare location. Fills each player's hand with crap. It denies you a draw, and it means everything is just cluttered. This can also completely shut down some decks, like the Beast Bounce deck, that need to manage the size of their hand as a resource to get the most out of their cards, meaning it renders a number of cards kind of just useless. TVA is another that changes the dynamic of the game completely in a way that can be kind of polarized depending on your deck. While there are a number of decks that play a lot of cheap, low curve things that can play interesting games in just 4 turns, there's also a number of decks in Marvel Snap that don't really get going until the 3rd or 4th turn, so they essentially have an auto loss in the TVA, so it would be a really sour experience if that was one that came up too frequently. Speaking of sour experiences, the last one in the rare set of locations here is Weird World, which is another one similar to District decks that I often find myself bailing out on. So again, happy that this one is in the rare category. Up next, we have uncommon locations. There are currently 22 of these active in Marvel Snap as of my recording of this video. These are about 8 times more likely than the ultra rare locations to occur, but they occur about half as frequently as the most common ones. These locations, such as Bar Sinister here, can have a pretty sizable impact on the game, but they're not quite as polarized as the rare location impacts, such as District X or Weird World. I'm not going to go over all of these one by one, but I'm going to go ahead and give them a scroll through here, pointing out some of my favorites or giving commentary of them as a few as we go. There are a number in here that are data mined that aren't quite active in the game yet, but you can see some of these became active quite recently. Some really interesting designs in the unreleased ones, such as Morag here. You can't play your first card here each turn, or Pleasant Hill. Whenever you play a card here, draw a card. This one seems especially powerful in swinging, especially considering that the draw 2 is considered a rare location, when this could potentially be a draw 3 or a draw 4 for players over the course of the game. Obviously, there's also common locations in Marvel Snap, the bread and butter that flip up in a majority of the games that you're playing. As of recording this video, there's currently 68 of those that are live in the game, along with another 10 or so that are data mined but yet to be released inside of the game files. If you look in the video description down below, I'm going to go ahead and link to snap.fan, which was the website I was looking to scroll all of these on in this video, so you can browse those for yourself rather than me scrolling 68 of them here for you in the video. You can browse them at your own leisure. At any rate, I hope you enjoyed this video. Is this useful information to you? Was this something that you knew about, or did you learn something here today? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Remember, if you did enjoy the video, to tap that like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. I post Marvel Snap deck highlights, game news, updates, and other tidbits like this here 7 days a week. I'd love to see you around again. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and thanks for watching as always, folks.